All right, but still on the issue of law and order, you may have noticed in the last week or so that suddenly the government has decided it's an issue. I wonder why. Perhaps because the polls are going not their way, and clearly crime, law and order is emerging as a major issue in the run-up to the election in 80 days or so. I'm sorry, I've got a sniffly nose. So a new raft of policies have been coming out of the beehive at relatively regular intervals. Is this all part of a long-term plan to deal with law and order and crime policies, or is it political expediency? Well, one person who thinks she's got the answer to that question is the Deputy Leader of the ACT Party, Brooke van Velden, who joins us by video link now. Brooke, lovely to see you again. You're saying Labor are fundamentally nicking these policies off someone else, but it's not you.
Oh, look, I think Labor have been nicking some policies off ACT. If you look at what they've released in the last week, they've said that youth offenders should now have some ankle bracelets on them. That's been an ACT Party policy. We've said that kids should be sentenced for community work, which is in line with our policy for instant practical penalties. And we've also said that we need to invest in some more youth facility beds. The thing that's different between ACT and Labor, though, is that you can't actually trust Labor on anything to do with crime because they're rolling this all out a few days before an election after about 5 years of saying that they need more kindness to criminals rather than putting victims
and
first.
Literally arguing in some circumstances that there isn't a crime problem, that people are just reading the statistics wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, it was only a few weeks ago that we had the Deputy Prime Minister, Carmel Sepuloni, asked what she thought about crime in Auckland, and she said along the lines of, oh, it's not actually that bad. I think what's happened is that Labor have seen and finally woken up to the fact that Kiwis don't feel safe on the streets. Their polling is starting to plummet, and they've gone, maybe we should finally figure out what the problems are in society and the problems that Kiwis are facing and actually listen to them. But I'm pretty cynical about this. I don't trust Labor on crime. They wanted to reduce the prison population. They've spent more money on cultural reports than on victims, and they've made our streets less safe.
I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Puts you in a slightly interesting position, though. They've got a few weeks sitting in the House. They may well continue this rush and have some legislative or policy changes they want to introduce to the House before it rises for the election. And if you don't support those changes, rushed or not, you're going to look like you're soft on crime.
No, I'd be surprised if they managed to rush through any more laws, considering how many they've still got to rush through. You know, we've had urgency this week. We've been told already that there's extended sittings next week, and there'll be further extended sittings. They have a lot of Labor Party policy that they want to rush through, that ACT will need to walk back in another term of government. But look, if these are sensible laws that are along the same lines that ACT already supports, then we'd be open to supporting them. If it's good law, it doesn't matter who it's come from. And if it's the fact that Labor have picked up from the ACT Party website our crime and law and order policies, then that's a good thing. If we can make New Zealanders safer and our streets safer, then that's a good thing. But certainly I would not say that this is Labor finally being tough on crime, because they've spent the last 5 years cuddling criminals.
All right. We have had an incident, obviously, about this time yesterday. In fact, it was unfolding exactly 24 hours ago. That just by the nature of the way the media and society works is going to be in political play. I'm not sure personally that that's a good thing, given the emotions around it, and I think policy is best done with long timelines and reflection. Well, firstly, just the party's attitude to the events of yesterday and how you intend to approach those events in the context of a wider political debate and the election campaign?
Look, I agree with you, Sean. I don't think we should be rushing to any conclusions. It's less than 24 hours since members of the public were shot and killed, and we don't actually know the facts. We know that the police will be doing their inquiry. What we do know is that this man didn't have a license for a firearm. We don't know how he got this firearm, but we also don't know why he was on home detention. And I know a lot of people will be wondering, why was he on home detention and how did he get a firearm? But I don't actually think it's useful for us to speculate or to rush to say that we need to change policies when we don't actually know the answers to those questions. So I think it's better for us as leaders to actually wait for the facts before trying to suggest that there should be policy changes.
All right, fair enough. Look, I'd also say in terms of the sort of youth justice policies that Labor's been rolling out, they are also very much in line with what National had announced. Maybe finally we've got some consensus on these issues.
Well, I think what's really happening here is that Kiwis do not feel safe. They really do not feel safe. I spend a lot of time talking to people, whether that's shop owners or people just out on the streets, and shop owners have actually said to me they do not feel safe at work anymore providing for their families. I've had one woman in particular who burst into tears on me saying she doesn't feel safe going to work because both shops on either side had been ram raided and it was only a matter of time before she was next. And I think that's unacceptable. And we've also got women I know who no longer even catch public transport because they're afraid of what they might encounter at the bus stop waiting. I don't think that's right. And I think that sentiment has been growing over the past 5 years, in part because Labor has been kind to criminals. There have dropped consequences for crime, and they had that policy of reducing the prison population, and they've met it. We've still got crime occurring, but we've got more criminals on the streets. So, in effect, we are responding to what people are saying, and we've been listening to them. And if we can create policies that make our streets safer and give consequences to criminals, then I'm all for it.
All right, we should be making less criminals in the first place as well, Brooke. And I hate to say it, but we look at what we do know in the very early stages of this incident yesterday and some mental health issues there. This country in the 90s, early 2000s, we decimated our mental health sector. We deinstitutionalised a whole lot of people and went for community care. And as a result, we have a justice system which is often not dealing with criminals, but people who are insane or mentally unwell. Isn't that part of the solution as well as locking up more crims?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you firstly, I think the best duty that the government has is to keep people safe. So if there are criminals, let's get them off the streets so there aren't more victims. But then the question is, well, what do you do with them? You don't just want to lock people up and leave them, right? So I think proper rehabilitation in prisons is a good thing, and it's necessary so that it's not just people going in and out of prison, but we can actually set people on a better path and a healthier path. But depending on where people have come from in life, you're right, there's a lot more that we can do, whether that's in mental health or whether that's on good education so people don't fall into crime. I mean, ACT has policies on all of these areas where we want to see proper rehabilitation in prisons. We want to see charter schools to give the most vulnerable kids a better shot at a good education. So every kid, no matter how wealthy or poor they are, has a good opportunity to have a good life. But we also want to make sure that kids aren't being born into situations where they have parents on welfare who are constantly on welfare, and we have to get kids and parents out of that situation. So we've got welfare reform as well on top of all of this. Importantly, oranga tamariki reform coming from Karen Chua, talking about her own experiences growing up in SIFs and how we could make that different for kids going through that same experience now. I don't know enough about the particular details of this guy and his upbringing,
But
and I don't want to speculate.
I can guarantee you, there's not going to be one factor here that caused this tragedy. There will be numerous factors over many times involving all sorts of areas of policy or New Zealand society. There's no silver bullet to what happened in Auckland yesterday.
No, but once again, Sean, it's really hard to speculate when we don't actually know the facts about this person. We don't know how he got a firearm. We don't know why he was on home detention, but we also don't know everything about his upbringing and where, you know, what actually led to this. So I don't think it's healthy. But of course, no man is an island, and people experience a lot of things throughout their lives, whether it's through education, health, their employment status. Everything has an effect on the community and individuals. So you're right. The best thing that we can do, though, is give everybody a great educational start in life, and have proper access to basic healthcare facilities when people are young, and also making sure that victims are safe on the streets. That's what I want. I think those are very important pillars of what government is involved in, and we don't do those basics right.
Yeah. I hear you, Brooke, and I thank you for joining us this morning. Brooke van Velden, the Deputy Leader of the ACT Party, and she's standing, of course, in the Tamaki electorate, and some are saying she's got a good chance of winning there. The fight's on, isn't it?